Right? It's been a long time since we last sat down and chatted. I know it's been a bit of a trial for everybody, and I think I'd like to talk a little bit today about the floods and its effects, and perhaps some of its causes. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm really saddened by the poor victims of this flooding in the whole country, and the fact that they are now destitute, some of them, and that a lot of them are in great need of assistance. And I sympathize with all of them, and I really extend my heartfelt sadness for everything that has happened to them. And we'd like to also mention this, that we also stand with them with their irritation with the government for their inaction and their complete lack of empathy with those people who are victims of this flood. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them for being upset with the government. I don't blame them for being angry. It is, after all, natural for them to feel that way, since no help has been extended to them even till today. And that's a really sad thing. Why the government is waiting for a cabinet meeting instead of convening an emergency meeting as soon as it happened is beyond me. There have been lots of people in the political circles trying to downplay the flooding, and I think that is wholly insensitive. A lot of them claim that these are natural disasters, when in reality, I don't believe myself that there is such a thing called a natural disaster. Disasters, yes. Natural disaster, no. I think that we ought to pay attention to what we have been doing to the environment. There are many in Malaysia who have the same opinion, that although we like to blame climate change, in fact, one of the professors from the Maritime Institute was explaining that we can't just blame climate change or the flooding, the recent flooding, on climate change alone, although yes, it is a major component, climate change. But this climate change is not something that is a naturally occurring thing. We have accelerated it. We, meaning mankind, has accelerated this climate change. And on top of that, we don't have the proper alternative measures to balance the damage that we are doing to the environment with the kind of development we so yearn for. Again, that's because we have misunderstood what this development means. On the one hand, what we have done is we have, by virtue of greed alone, we have raped the environment. We have taken what we want, not what we need. We've taken what we want out of pure greed, unadulterated greed. And we have tried to make a living, a very handsome living, from this. But for the most part, the people making the handsome living are not the ones who are suffering now. These are the people who are, again, without conscience. They do things without thinking about the consequences. That for everything that happens here, there may be another effect somewhere else. They don't take that into consideration. Such is true of climate change. Something happens in one part of the world, it can devastate another part of the world because of that. But we don't seem to take that into consideration. And therefore, when we talk about development, all it means is to build and build and build and build, regardless of the consequences, and increase the population, put them all in a very small area. Look at Malaysia, for instance. We used to have places which were known for being water catchment areas. Now they are no longer water catchment areas. They are like deserts. The rain falls somewhere else. Who's to blame for that? We can't say this is a natural thing, because it's not. We have accelerated it somehow. through our actions, through our greed, through our dishonesty. We have done all these things. Now, the politician will have you believe, especially the politicians who are from the religiously inclined political parties, they'll have you believe that these floods are like the punishment from God for our immorality and also for our drinking, for our alcohol, things like this. I mean, these kind of statements that they make are extremely insensitive. And not only that, they are completely erroneous as well. And coming from a Muslim who claims that this is the punishment from God because of our immorality, maybe we can answer like this. We can say to this person and remind them about the story when the Prophet ﷺ was asked, how do we know when Allah is angry with us? And the Holy Prophet replied, when He removes the learned from amongst you, then that is when Allah will show you His anger. So look at it now. Look at it in Malaysia today. People who are experts and who are very well versed in their fields, like for instance, ecological engineering, development, construction and architecture, the environment, all of these people, the right people, the ones who actually know their field and their subject well, they are silenced because they don't perhaps hold the same political affiliation to any parties, or they don't like politics or anything like that, and therefore they are sidelined, and the scum rises to the surface. That is again from another hadith of the Prophet, when he says that there will come a time when the scum will rise to the surface. The time is now. The scum has risen to the surface. Those who are not qualified are put in positions of authority and power and making decisions. Look at the floods now. Why has there been so much inactivity? Why has the government not responded properly? It's no point after the fact going out and giving people a cash handout. That's not what they want. These people have lost everything, and you should have convened an emergency meeting as soon as it happened, instead of waiting. And therefore it goes to show you that you are not qualified to be a leader. You don't understand leadership. Now, getting back to this problem of the ecological imbalance, this professor from the Maritime Institute was remarking that it's not just climate change alone, it is also our myopic vision of development and its resulting lack of awareness with regard to the ecology and the environment. And as a result, we make decisions based on greed, based on its monetary value, not based on the ecological value, the impact to the environment, none of that. We pretend that we have these kind of mechanisms in place, but we don't use them in reality. Now that's one thing, but we can't just blame the politician alone, because the banks are also responsible for this. Whenever the developers go to the bank and ask the bank for a loan or some capital so that they can do these development projects, I mean, the bank should be a partner, an equal partner in the sense that they should be responsible for protecting the environment and the investment. It shouldn't just be the investment. They should also have the environment and the ecological impact analysis in mind as well. But they're not doing that. Again, they claim to do it, but they don't do it in reality, a proper job. Now we have places where we are building housing development projects which are below the water table line. I mean, that is in itself nonsensical. What would you expect, therefore, if there was a heavy rain, if there was a deluge? The places which would be affected first would be the ones that would be below the water table. So why build there? Again, because of greed. So if you have politicians who voice their so-called support on the one hand, but then give reasons which are highly insensitive and wrong, like the one I was mentioning earlier about the punishment from God, then we have to remind them again that as a Muslim, you cannot talk like that. It is because of you. Don't put the blame on God. God did not create this kind of a disaster. It is you. You created it, you accelerated it, you made it happen, and then when it did happen, you ignored it as if it didn't happen. That's very bad. This makes me also wonder what kind of leadership we have if during the floods, where the whole country is affected, you sit back and do nothing. You wait for 3 days before you even call out rescuers. Which makes me think to myself, wouldn't that be ripe for an invasion from a foreign power? They could at any time, at any moment, invade this country. What would we do about it? We'd still be sitting down in our hotel suites, having dinner with our political parties and enjoying ourselves, while the whole invasion carried on ahead. It's a possibility. We have to think about that. And that brings to mind again about this idea of leadership. When we think of it, what do we mean by leadership when we talk about it? I think maybe that would be a good subject or a good topic for another video, where we'll talk exclusively about what it means to be a leader and what are leadership qualities. So until next time, I bid you farewell.